Hey everyone, welcome to another Hometown History episode. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Dami.
And tonight we are going to talk about LBJ and when he came to Dallastown. The name of tonight's presentation is When LBJ Came to Dallastown and Other Stories of Presidential Visits to York County. This is going to be a two-part episode. We will start from the very first president, George Washington, and go up to JFK. Then we're going to take a brief pause and come back to hit LBJ and then the rest of the presidents.
Yes. And it wouldn't be Hometown History if we didn't give you our agenda for the evening. So with the death of Jimmy Carter on the top of our minds, unfortunately he just passed away recently, we're going to tell stories about some of the presidents that had come through York County. So they came during their candidacy for presidency. Some of them came before, some of them came after being president. But we're going to go in chronological order, and we're going to share everything to future President John Adams calling us mongrels, to Gerald Ford using a York College bathroom. And we're not going to hit every single president. There's too many, but we're going to highlight some of the cool and the weird things that happened when they visited York County.
We are down in Dallastown tonight, my old stomping grounds. I went to Dallastown Area High School, and so we are in the Historical Society. After Dami and I give our part one and part two about the presidents, we are going to have the leaders of the Historical Society on to talk to you about how you can get more involved. Of course, Dami and I always have takeaways of things that you should know about the presidents who visited York County. First is that Pennsylvania is a swing state. This makes us a good place for presidents who are campaigning to visit. Second is we are able to track some of the most powerful people in the world because of our industrial might and our proximity. We're close to things. And finally, out of the 45 men who have served as president, 32 we know of at least have visited York County. And during that time, you'd think that there would be division and debating and protesting, but really it has brought us together in a lot of unity. And we're going to go over those today. Let's get started with our first. Good old George Washington.
George Washington, and he's presiding over us this evening in the background. But he's actually a four-time visitor of York County, and he visited York County 2 times before the American Revolution, but never during the war. And there isn't much documented about these trips, unfortunately. But one trip that is documented is when he went to McAllisterstown, near now Hanover, in 1791. And he described it as a very pretty village with a number of good brick houses and mechanics in it.
Yes, what an observation. Lots of brick houses around here, which at the time would have spoke to the high wealth, right, and the idea that they're stable.
It was a compliment. We might not look at it as, that glowing today.
Look at all the brick houses
But back then, he had high praise for that area. So
after Hanover, Washington made his way to York. He stayed with Thomas Hartley, who was York's first congressman to go and serve. And while visiting, Washington worshipped at the German Reformed Church that was on West Market Street. And he said, "I went to hear morning service performed in the Dutch Reformed Church, which, being in that language, not a word of which I understood, I was in no danger of becoming a proselyte in its religion by the eloquence of the preacher." He didn't understand a word, but he probably sat through it and nodded his head.
He did the polite thing. So then when he passed through York County in 1794, this was after addressing the Whiskey Rebellion, and he experienced an uneasy Susquehanna River crossing. So he said, "I rode yesterday afternoon through the rain from Yorktown to this place and got twice in the height of it hung and delayed by that means on the rocks in the middle of the Susquehanna." And anyone that knows anything about the Susquehanna knows that there's some deep parts, but when it's shallow, you can just walk across it.
Oh, yeah. My husband and I went paddleboarding this summer, and I was able to stand just right in the middle of Susquehanna. It was really beautiful.
And then just as quick, you're going to hit a hole, and it's 30 feet deep. So.
All right, next we have up John Adams. So John Adams is our second president, obviously, of the United States, and he stayed in New York for just under 2 months, which is actually quite a long time. He stayed when he served as the delegate to the Continental Congress, and that was in 1777. He didn't care for us much. He called us mongrels, benumbs with a great turper. He particularly disliked that the settlers didn't learn English.
Interesting. Okay.
That they obviously spoke German.
Right.
And he thought that was, uncivilized of us.
Well, by 1800, he changed his tune when he visited again, and this time he was our president. And it had been 23 years since his first visit to York County, and he commented on our development. We had more houses, more businesses, but we also tended to the soil for more farmland to cultivate. And we have a painting of our favorite Lewis Miller from that same year.
Oh, I cut that.
You got rid of it?
Sorry,
I'm sorry, everybody. But if you know anything about hometown history, you know that we love Lewis Miller.
You know, I just wanted an excuse to bring him up.
Yeah,
really.
And they can look it up on their own if you go Google Lewis Miller and John Adams.
So next we have a York County president that a borough is named after, and this is Thomas Jefferson. So in 1776, this is the year of our country's founding, Thomas Jefferson spent the night at the Sign of the Horse. This is an inn in McAllisterstown, which was in Hanover. So he was on his way from Monticello to Philadelphia to attend the First Continental Congress meeting, and just 2 months later he began drafting the Declaration of Independence. So this is a pretty important nationwide event, and right before that we had this very influential man come right through York County. From Jefferson's memo book, he said that he arrived in time to go to the local barber. So we got his haircut here. It's interesting though, there's no proof that he actually visited Jefferson.
Okay.
The town was named after his politics, not his presence.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, well, he visited, Andrew Jackson ended up visiting before he was president, and that was in 1819, and he rushed through the county on his way to Lancaster. So unfortunately, we were a little bit of a flyover there. But while I was here, he got into a disagreement over travel fees. So Cornelius Garriston had just transported him from Shrewsbury to York on his sled, and he charged him $50. So apparently Jackson lost his temper and countered with 30, to which Garriston agreed.
Yeah.
And at that time, that's a lot of money.
You have to wonder what that conversation was like. Like, I will not pay you the $50, sir.
Being yelled at by a future president.
Right. So next we have the only president ever to come from Pennsylvania, and this is James Buchanan. He grew up in Lancaster, and at the time, York County leaned toward his political orientation towards being a Democrat, which is today, you guys know, is very different from current day Democrats. He sympathized with a lot of the Southerners and slavery and with states' rights, and he actually represented the county in the U.S. Congress.
Interesting. Yeah, so he would network a lot with the different dignitaries in York, including the historian George Prow. So a lot of you know that name from hometown history and just York County history in general. And at that time, Buchanan seemed in good health, but a month later, he took sick and he ended up dying 2 months later. So that was very swift.
Yep. All right, moving right along here to Dami's favorite president, Abraham Lincoln.
Honest Abe.
So Abraham Lincoln went through York alive 2 times, and that's why we have visited in quotation marks. He was here technically 3 times that we know of. The first time he was on his way to deliver the famous Gettysburg Address. This would have been in 1863, and just a few months earlier, to kind of orient you to the history at the time, York County leaders would have just surrendered to the Confederates, and now he's going right through this area that he also knew voted against him in both elections. York County did not vote for him.
Yeah. So 2 years prior, his train had stopped in York, but Lincoln was absent from it. He'd been rerouted because of a supposed assassin that was out to get him. And his absence disappointed the large crowd. You know, you're there waiting, you want to see this president, and it's not there. So the second time he traveled through York was on his funeral train, unfortunately. And that was in 1865, and his body stopped in York. And the Philadelphia Inquirer reported that an elderly black man shouted, "He was crucified for us." So, very poignant.
Cared about.
Yes, absolutely.
It makes us think about, if I became president, where would be the first place that I would visit? Have you thought about where you would visit? Elected president, bam, going here.
Newburytown.
Oh my gosh.
Where I'm from.
Oh, she would say that. Okay, well now I feel like I'd say York County.
I'd move the White House.
I think I would go to the national parks.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Which one?
I really want to go see like Utah and like Joshua Tree over that southwest area.
Gettysburg.
I've been to Gettysburg. I've seen it, trying to mix it up a little bit.
Okay. That's fine.
So here's another example of a president who came to York County soil thanks to a well-laid train track.
Yeah, so after William McKinley's 1901 assassination, his body traveled from Buffalo to Washington, D.C., and church bells ended up ringing out. They were signaling the closing of the stores and the stopping of factories so that mourners could observe the train, because that's what they used to do back in the day. You'd take off work and you'd go watch this train. But unfortunately for them, they nearly had to jump out of the way of the speeding train to avoid getting hit. So a funeral train barreling down, killing observers would not be a good thing. And it was going 25 miles an hour hour, which might not sound fast now, but back then, and especially for a train,
Yeah.
that was moving.
You're gonna hurt somebody.
I know, and the floral arrangements would have been shot-putted with extreme precision to make that train. So you can imagine just this train going by and people throwing flowers at it to try and mourn this great president that was assassinated.
Now, they eventually got their due. A disappointed crowd eventually was able to adorn the train with their grieving flowers because it came back through to its final destination to get to Ohio. This time, it rolled through at such a low speed that observers could at least peek through the well-lit Pullman funeral car to look at the casket.
So there's actually McKinleys here in York County that are directly related to the past president, and their common ancestor is David McKinley, and he settled in Chanceford Township all the way back in 1743. So if you are related to William McKinley or David McKinley, please leave a comment in the Facebook comment sections because we'd like to hear from you.
In fact, if you're related to any president, we'd love to hear from you. And today's McKinley's birthday. Thanks to our trusty Kevin, friend over here, who's a social studies teacher, and my computer luckily gets text messages, so that's fun. Thanks for saving the day, Kev.
I wonder how many McKinleys are out there that don't know they're related to the McKinley.
So my family lore says that we're related to Eisenhower. Apparently, I'm like the 9th or 11th cousin. I've looked at the records, our Eisenhowers in our family. I have not done the genealogy to back it up.
I am not related to anyone famous in America, and I have the genealogy to back it up.
Well, here's a president that I would like to be related to. This is my favorite, Teddy Roosevelt. I love him so much.
He's my third favorite.
Who's your second? George Washington.
George Washington.
Yep, I should have known that. So it was in 1906 that he came through York because there was a brand new Capitol building that was built in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and he had just been there to visit the new rotunda. So while he was driving his carriage through the main thoroughfare of the city, people were shouting at him and they were cheering. He was a very well-liked president. He probably crossed West York Avenue, which is today Roosevelt Avenue, which I'm on very frequently because I work in downtown York, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And then what he was doing is he was making his way to the York Fair. About 25,000 people gathered at the fairgrounds to hear him celebrate York's prosperity, talk about how much we've been able to grow since our founding. Here is a picture of a front page newspaper of the Dispatch.
That's cool.
It took up the entire front page, which is very unique, and a newspaper did not do this again for the next 82 years.
Hey, something special.
Yeah.
So if you were going to host a president today, where would you take them?
I probably should have thought about this. Probably, I would probably take them in a car through every back street.
Okay.
Because I feel like we highlight all like the beautiful things. Like I would take them to York County parks and stuff. But there's this part of me that's like, no, this is York. Like this is the good and the bad, and here are the things that you need to know about our county. But I would definitely hit up the county parks.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for like Lake Williams. How about you?
I'd take him to 83 Diner in Dallastown.
The waffles are banging there.
They're really good.
Yeah.
It's like, cheers, everyone knows your name.
All right, next up we have FDR.
Yeah, so he came through York twice in the 1930s on his train, but he didn't stop. So, however, he did make time to wave to everybody. There was about 10,000 to 15,000 people in Hanover and Spring Grove that were waving to him as he came by. And kids ended up placing coins on the rails, so after the train went through, you could pick up your coin that was crushed by the train.
How many families probably have those coins and you don't even realize it? It's just like
or
grandpa's
how many
junk.
people threw them away
Right.
because they were like, why do I have this crinkled up coin? And it's like a famous presidential train coin that they didn't know about. Write these things down, people. Put it in an envelope. Write in a description.
Share your stories.
Yeah.
All right, next we have Harry S. Truman. It was during World War II. York County was able to connect a lot of different businesses for resource sharing, and this was called the York Plan.
Yes.
We could do a whole hometown history episode on that.
We know a lot about that.
We should probably do that at some point. So Harry Truman came to York in 1944, and he commended the county for all our hard work. He also made a point to be critical of chiselers, he called them, for profiting from the war. And one side note, I didn't put a dot behind S because Harry's middle name was just S. A lot of people put a period, and it's actually not short for anything.
It's just S.
S is his middle name.
He was ahead of the times.
Here's a picture of him on a train addressing a crowd in 1948.
A very big crowd. I love the Sears sign there, too.
Yeah,
Blast
you can
from the
orient
past.
yourself.
Yeah. So that brings us to Dwight D. Eisenhower. So he came to speak to industrial leaders at the Manufacturers Association of York's dinner at the Country Club. And as they were leaving dinner, Laverne Brenneman asked him if he wanted to play golf, which he agreed to. And if you know anything about United States presidents, a lot of them golf. It's a great pastime. So apparently he played very well, and Brenneman kept Ike's signed scorecard, and Ike scored a respectable 88 with a 41 on the second nine. So that's pretty good.
You like golf. You know what
I
that
love
means,
golf.
right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, he's not going pro anytime soon, but for a casual golfer, that's impressive.
Respectable
Yeah.
score.
And I would love to get my hands on that scorecard.
Well, here's a picture. So there you can see
Yep.
right there is Dwight D. Eisenhower, and this picture is of him when he came
and
to York County.
at the Eisenhower farm in Gettysburg, he has a putting green in the backyard. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Mhm.
Nice. All right, so down to our last president of this segment, part one, we got JFK. So as a presidential candidate in 1960, he spoke to a crowd of about 4,500 people at the York Fair. He then was asked by the Salvation Army to buy a dollar brick to help them build their new citadel. And unfortunately, when the president reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, the multimillionaire found it empty.
Womp womp.
But miraculously and immediately, some of his aides magically appeared with a $10 bill and said, "Here you go."
That's what
Thank
assistants
you
are
very
for.
much. Here are some more pictures of him. There you can see him right front and center with some troopers down in the front. And that's it for our first part.
Yeah.
All right. So stay tuned.
Come back for part two. It
Part
gets
two.
interesting.
We'll start with LBJ
Yeah.
in Dallastown.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.